Welcome to the BeWell program. My name is Dr. Ted Bender. I'm a clinical psychologist and the CEO of the BeWell Network. You can always learn more about me at BeWellNetwork.com. Our number is 877-769-8977. My goal, as always, in this program is to educate people and to help many people understand that they are not alone. There is help for the many life obstacles that we endure. Today, I am honored to interview author and celebrity agent Darren Prince. His story and journey through recovery is incredibly powerful. Thank you so much, Darren, for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Doctor. I appreciate it.
You represent so many celebrities: Magic Johnson, Carmen Electra, Hulk Hogan, Charlie Sheen, Evel Knievel, Dennis Rodman, and many more. Many of my childhood heroes, as I'm sure you probably feel exactly the same way. And I found your book truly enthralling. It was a one stop. I couldn't put it down once I started reading it. It was just so interesting. And you've lived this incredible life and are continuing this journey. And I was really glad to have you on the show because your journey through and your recovery story are very powerful. And the life you live and the lessons that you've learned from this, I think will make a big difference and have made a big difference in people's lives. Your story began, I think, right from the beginning. I felt myself reliving my childhood through some of your book. I was a huge card collector myself, started really more in the mid-'80s to early '90s, and I now have these gigantic boxes full of carefully arranged binders of cards that are worth absolutely nothing. So
I was going to say, I hate to break it to you, they're worth not even the cardboard they're written.
I know it, and it kills me.
And it's got extremely greedy in the mid-'80s once I created a business, so it was the stuff before 1980 that skyrocketed.
Exactly. And all my stuff is 80s and past. And my wife has been trying to get me to throw it out for years, and I just refuse to let go.
The memories.
Yeah, exactly. And I spent hours and hours like you organizing and trading with my friends and going to card shows. I loved going to card shows, and it was great. So that's how your career started. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got started with that.
I wasn't the best student, and my mom and dad, always supported anything that I did. And I had this teacher who's very near and dear to me this day, Elliot Lovey. And I was 14 in an intro to business class, and he challenged the entire classroom of kids to go home and create a business and bring it back the next day. And I was always classified with having severe learning disability. I was in small classrooms. I know that did a number on my psyche and my self-esteem and my self-worth, but this was one thing. I had a business, I just didn't have a functioning business. At that age, a lot of my friends were out of card collecting. It was corny, it wasn't cool anymore. But I had 4 different odd jobs: squeezing orange juice at a supermarket. I was a busboy at a diner. I worked at a pizzeria, and I worked at a stockroom in a sneaker store. And I would take all that money and buy their cards. So when this teacher challenged me, I went downstairs that night to my dad in the basement, and I told him, "Hey, I'm starting a business. I need insurance on my baseball cards." And he looked at me like I was a little bit crazy. He goes, "All right, well, what do you need? If you ever get God forbid, a fire in the house or a flood, I'll make sure your collection is protected." I said, "I probably need about 8 or 9. And he's like, "Okay, I'll get you $1,000 worth of homeowners insurance, so you know nothing, can ever, if it goes wrong, you'll be reimbursed." And I remember, like yesterday, I was telling my mom who's here right now this story 2 days ago. I was in my pajamas. I start tugging on his pants. I go, "Dad, 8 or 9,000, not 8 or 900." Looks at me like I'm crazy. And he goes, "How did you get 8 or 9,000 in cards?" I said, "Well, my friends liked all these new players, and I would take the old stinky cards that they got from their grandfathers and their uncles, and like Mickey Mantle and Joe DiMaggio, and because they were worth more money. They never cared about those guys. They didn't know who they were." And he's like, "Wow, this is unbelievable, but who would buy these?" And I ran back upstairs, grabbed a huge newspaper ad. The local paper is called the West Essex Tribune. It's still around. There was Sal and Rocco Salino, were local card show promoters at the Holiday Inn. For $20, you can get a table in 2 weeks. And Stephen Simon, who is now vice president of Prince Marketing for my agency, we go back 41 years. We decided to split the table, $10 each. I spent 2 solid weeks every day after school, no homework, no nothing, beautiful holders, display case. I just knew that this was like my time to shine. This was my time to show the kids in school, the teachers that said I was damaged, I was no good, I was the dumb one, I was the learning disabled one. And at that morning on that Saturday, I was up at literally 5 a.m. like I was going to my first day as my own boss, and the whole house was sleeping. I could not wait. That feeling you get for a big Little League game or soccer game, that's what it was. And I made over $1,000 on that Sunday afternoon. Steve made $50. He went in it just for the fun, and bought, sold, and trade. And I felt so alive that day. My grandmother came, my parents were there. Just something, there was like this bomb that ignited in me, that I finally felt an area in life at that age where I belong. Not only did I belong, but people looked up to me. And that was the start of the baseball card business.
That's fascinating. And you mentioned special education, and was it difficulty concentrating, attention type issues?
Impossible. Yeah. On almost everything. And, I remember 8th, 9th grade, all I'd be doing, doctor, was I'd have my notepad. I was acting like I'm taking notes of what the teacher was thinking, but I'm making notes. My dad said I was a statistical, mathematical genius. And to this day, I remember everybody's phone number, all my credit card numbers. It was amazing that he said there's so much of your brain that doesn't work like normal people, but there's so much to it that doesn't work like anybody I've ever met in my life.
As I was reading, that really jumped off the page, and I was going to ask you, I was curious, a lot of people, kids who have trouble with attention and attention deficit issues, that when they find something they're really fascinated or really interested in, they are able to focus and pay attention. And did you find that to be true with the cards and the card industry, even though you were struggling in other areas?
Absolutely. There were a lot of people, I believe, that were in that same position as I was. And even to this day, I jumped back into it as an investor a year and a half ago. It's hotter than ever, the basketball and sports card market. And I still see a lot of guys that are there that I've known for 35, 40 years. And it's nice because I walk in there now and I get a whole different level of respect, not just for the Prince Marketing Group agency that I built, but more so for the recovery advocacy that I do, because I think a lot of them can identify in their own way.
Exactly. Moving forward in the book, as a psychologist, I can't help but kind of see the synthesis of the evolution of someone else's story. And what we see at the beginning, is the attention issues, the special education issues, and then you went to camp, I believe, and that's when the opiates were first introduced. And I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
At 14 years old.
At 14, exactly, at a young age. And again, as a psychologist, as we're doing history on people, it starts young. It's sometimes much more exacerbated of a problem, and certainly kind of fit that mold. It also reminded me a lot of when people who have described anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety, social anxiety disorders, when they first discover alcohol. It's a very similar reaction to how you wrote about the Demerol introduction in your book. Talk a little bit about that.
So the Demerol introduction, I was in sleepaway camp at Camp Emerson in Hinsdale, Massachusetts, and I loved the camp. But, growing up a mama's boy and being so attached to my parents, it was always hard for me to be away. And I think I had a lot of social anxiety issues the first week. So I had horrible stomach pains one night, and the counselor took me to see the nurse. Her name was Greta. She gave me this green liquid in a clear cough syrup cup. And I remember it tasted absolutely horrific. I was gagging on it. But as I was walking across the softball field, the feeling to this day that I still get chills, which reminds me that I'm still a drug addict through and through, was that green liquid allowed me to be introduced to the world. When I got back to the bunk, I felt like Superman, and all the kids got introduced to Darren Prince. And I was, motor mouth. I was the funny guy, the cool guy, the popular one, the talkative one, the good-looking one. Everything I wanted to be in that moment was right there, and I had the courage to go to the bunk next door and flirt with girls for the first time in my life, which was unheard of for somebody that was shy, that felt so introverted and out of place. And, I did it for 3 straight weeks. Every single night I would heel over, I would con, I would lie, whatever I had to do to get that counselor to take me to the nurse, until mom and dad came up for visitation day and found that I was taking liquid Demerol.
Yeah, and they were probably very upset about that. I think a lot of
furious.
A lot of people these days, especially.
But you're not telling a 14-year-old kid that you can't do that. I don't care what my parents would have told me at 14. That made me feel like Superman. Exactly. I was going to do whatever I had to do to get that into my system. And, case in point, happened with the dentist. about 3-4 months later, we were back home, and Mom had no idea what was going on. And he gave her these white pills after some wisdom teeth were taken out, and I didn't know what they were, but man, within 30 minutes, I was to the moon. In my bedroom, I'm on the phone at this point, and my business was up and running, making money. I'm calling up everybody, and I went downstairs in the middle of the night to get something to eat when they were sleeping, and I specifically remember 2 pills left in that bottle. I was devastated. And I said, wait a minute. If I can con and lie and do what I did in sleepaway camp, I guarantee my mom and dad are going to be concerned, because what parents want to see their kids suffer.
Yeah.
I go down the next morning holding my cheek. There was no pain. Shaking, the crocodile tears, everything I had to do. She took me to the dentist. I did the same bullshit to the freaking dentist. And he gave her whatever it was, another 2-3 more days of pills that I found out were extra strength Vicodin.
This is still at 14, right?
14 years old.
Yeah.
So for anybody listening, don't blame the nurse. It would have happened anyway. I would have found my way to my drug addiction. I don't blame anybody but me.
Yeah, and a lot of people might be thinking, and rightfully so, how could this nurse give Demerol out to a kid 3 weeks in a row? People got to remember also that the way opiates are prescribed was much different back then. It was designed, and these drugs were marketed as moderate pain. And, dentists and nurses, they were just giving this stuff out freely because we didn't really fully understand the dangers of them like we do now. These days, you go to a dentist and you're pretty hard pressed to get any kind of opiate prescription from a dentist these days. It's take some Tylenol, take some ibuprofen. That has changed dramatically, but only really in the last few years.
Yep, exactly.
So fast forward in time, 14 years old, introduced to what you described as, Darren Prince has arrived. The opiates removed the inhibitions, and the real you, so to speak, was able to come out. And you were charming, and you could talk to anybody and build relationships and make friends very easily, all of which has helped you significantly in your career. Fast forward to when it started to become a consistent use, because I know it was kind of off and on, but I believe you said in your book around the age of 20 or 21 is when it became pretty consistent.
Yeah, I mean, probably a little bit earlier. Started like 18 or 19 in the house. They kind of caught me a few times stealing my mom. My mom had surgery one day, and my dad caught me taking pills out of her bottle. And again, I look back at those moments. That was the beginning of a volcano and an eruption. Like, what child is looking at their parents' pills that they needed for surgery? And it's why I'm so passionate about speaking to kids, because I know there's many out there doing that because of a feeling of less than. So speak up now. Don't be Darren Prince of old, because by all rights, doctor, I should have been dead a long time ago. And I would say probably 1920 when I moved out on my own. And now I'm making real money. I went from baseball cards to autograph signings with some of the biggest names in the world with my company, Prince of Cards. From Muhammad Ali, Magic Johnson, Joe Frazier, Evel Knievel, Chevy Chase, Pamela Anderson, all the people you mentioned. And so now I got my own money. I arrived, developed a steroid addiction along the way. I mean, I'm thinking everybody, wants to be me. Everybody wants to hang out with me. I needed every bit of it because that broken, insecure little kid was always inside of me. So I needed all the adulation, all the props, everything. And now I had money. So I didn't need to go to the streets. I lied and conned every freaking doctor that was out there that I had sciatica, I had anxiety, I had this. And again, you're talking 30 years ago. It wasn't difficult to get opiates back then,
Another part of your book that I think a lot of patients I've worked with, especially over the past, it's depending on what stage they were in their recovery. You mentioned coming to a point of acceptance at some point. A lot of people that are in that early recovery stage have not reached that yet, or they truly believe that consequences are what keep you sober. If that were the case, then pretty much everyone who's struggled with substance use disorders would be sober because there's so many consequences. You had a significant car accident where I believe you said you had to have 100 stitches in your face.
My mom's right here right now. She still looks at my face
I'm
certain
sure.
points and sees, 21 years old. And that was after 1 year of an outpatient program for getting arrested 3 times, literally the next day. My brilliant thinking told me to call my friend Dave up and said, hey, man, let's go to Nerd City and celebrate. We did these mind eraser shots, took a handful of Xanax. He fell asleep behind the wheel. I woke up with my face up against the windshield. You think back to moments like that. When I opened my eyes, the first 2 people I saw, for anybody listening, were my mom and dad with tears in their eyes, because that's what addiction does. It destroys families. we don't just destroy ourselves, we destroy everybody else around us.
Yes.
And to just know that there was nothing they can do. I had money, I had success. I did not feel I had a problem. I thought, I shouldn't have been arrested this couple of times. My friend should have been in trouble for holding the bag of drugs at the concert. This wasn't my fault. Acceptance never came in at that point. And, thank God 17 years later, I would say it finally did. But I think the real issue when it went to a new level is when I started Prince Marketing Group in 1994. When the agent, Darren Prince, arrived, that's when it got psychotically insane, because I was unstoppable with the biggest stars on the planet, and again, believed all the bullshit. It was the women, it was the partying, it was the red carpets, it was the Super Bowl. It was, you walk into a room with Muhammad Ali or Joe Frazier, kings of the world. I mean, presidents and the biggest mega A-listers are falling at their feet, and I'm right by their side. So, I just took full advantage of it. Again, because that unhealed kid, that broken kid on the inside, was always staring back at the unhealing, and I needed all of it.
For our listeners out there, Darren is one of the keys that brought Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali back after their third and vicious fight. I was a big boxing fan, have been for a long time, and I know that fight well. And you mentioned, I really, again, what I really loved about the book is I felt like I was there. I could picture myself like being right there, through your life and the words coming out of the book. And what was so interesting about that was there's this huge moment. You're a huge fan of both of these giants in the game. There you are, responsible for bringing them together, and all you wanted to do was escape.
I was snorting Percocets and Oxycontins an hour before that meeting.
Yeah.
And, I still get emotional thinking about it, especially this week. It was Muhammad's birthday yesterday, and it was Joe's on Sunday.
Yeah.
I remember when I was talking to Jay Shetty about it, I was like, on our interview on Purpose, I was like, here these guys love and respected me more than I ever loved and respected myself. Two all-time kings to the next level. And I did not feel worthy, because again, it went back to that little kid, that broken kid that never spoke up and had all that exterior success, but was a complete broken soul on the inside.
Another thing that really stood out to me is you have an incredible way with people and building trust and relationships. All of that's real. You can't really fake that. And any of these people that you've worked with, a lot of them would have seen right through it if it was all a facade. It wasn't a facade. I think one of the questions I had while I was reading this is, how did you kept it hidden, like most people suffering from addiction. They're brilliant at hiding it until it becomes something that you just can't hide anymore.
Highly functioning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How did you make it through all of that, yet be so genuine in your approach with your clients and a lot of these people you describe as some of your closest friends in the book? How did you maintain that genuineness while also the deceit of kind of hiding who you really were underneath it without faking it? That was something that was pretty fascinating to me.
Well, I like to always put it like this. I was never a bad person.
Yeah.
I was a sick person.
Right.
So I always made sure I focused on business. When I was on Chris Cuomo, the same thing. Before in the green room and on air, he just could not believe the level that I was functioning at. But, towards the end, a handful of them knew. I had as I mentioned in the book, Magic knew about a year and a half before I got clean. I had to speak to him. And Hulk Hogan knew when I was down in Tampa one day, and then I had to see him in Miami, and he was a little bit concerned. Dennis, I really didn't open up to until about, a week after I got sober. And, I love him to death. He called me crying. He just felt like, he would have expected me to call him. But I had a ton of people like that. So many people in my life had no idea there was a problem. Some to this day still believe I do not have a problem. I went through a bad run or a bad couple months. And when I'm on the phone with you and I'm muting you so I can drink half a bottle of Tussie and freaking snow Ambien, and that's a 7-day-a-week type of thing. I don't need to explain to people what a problem is after 3 overdoses those last 2 years. There was only a select few, probably 3 people in my life that knew how bad it was at the end. Because I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. Look, man, I'm the big time super agent, right? That's what everybody's calling me. I can't tell people I'm living a lie as a freaking functioning opiate addict.
Yeah, you mentioned being lucky to be alive. I agree. The combination of the different drugs, any one of those times could have been it. And you mentioned, Xanax and alcohol. To our listeners out there, that's one of the most deadly drug combinations that are known. Xanax and alcohol. Many people who have OD'd and passed away, oftentimes in their sleep, passed away from that combination. And you mentioned some overdoses. So yeah, I agree. Definitely lucky. But you've kind of turned all of these experiences into advocacy. I've had a lot of people ask me, as a CEO of a treatment company, why do I spend so much time doing media and talking to people and getting out in front of as many people as I can? Because I have literally had people and patients and people come to me and say, I saw you on the local news, or I saw you on that Fox show, or I read about what you guys are doing in the local paper, and it encouraged me to get help for myself. And I only needed to hear that once. And if I never hear it again the rest of my career, I reached that one person. And if anything from the pandemic has helped anything with mental health, is it's making it there's a little less stigma around mental health and substance use disorder than there was pre-pandemic.
Exactly.
And
let me tell you, there's a lot of people that didn't have mental health and substance abuse issues that do now because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, we in the treatment industry, and when this all first started, I was working at a large nonprofit hospital chain, and what we saw, what I saw coming was, I knew how bad it was going to be, because when you talk about mental health and substance use disorders, what worst possible combination could you have come up with besides economic downturn and social isolation? That's exactly what COVID has done to the world and our country, and I knew we were going to have a huge spike in overdose deaths and mental health, and both of those, unfortunately, have come to fruition. But when people like you and people that are in the public eye and celebrities come out and talk about this, just like they would talk about, at a cancer event or a medical disease or anything like that, it does make a huge difference in helping to fix one of our biggest problems, which is simply the stigma that we have around mental health and addictive disorders. So
look, man, I made a promise on July 2nd, 2008, when I was on my knees begging, crying, screaming, and calling out to God to take me out of hell. And I promise, if you do, I'll spend one day at a time taking others out with me.
Yeah.
And, he rose me to my feet. I had a burning sensation. I heard a voice in my right ear say, I've got you in the ready. I'm deaf in my left when we meet.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need to remember that, but it was this white light moment that changed me forever. And I dove headfirst into a 12-step fellowship and knew that I want to keep this gift. I better give it away to other people.
Yeah, you said something else in your book that I love, and it was someone else said it to you, I believe, Stephen Della Valle. I'm sorry if I pronounced his name wrong.
My sponsor, Steve.
Yeah, he said you got to put the same effort into sobriety as you did your using. So many words. That is so absolutely true. I've worked with patients, thousands of patients in early recovery, all stages of their recovery, and willingness and motivation. And that's something that they don't understand, especially early on, is that you put a ton of effort into maintaining this addiction. It's 24/7 hustle.
8 o'clock this morning, I did a Zoom meeting.
Exactly. And now
there's not a day that goes by where somebody doesn't reach out to me on social media. I've got my own foundation.
Yeah.
Now my own 501c3 Ming High Foundation. 100% of the proceeds, including some of my own money, if fundraising is light on any given quarter, we will call different treatment centers that reach out to us, or individuals that need treatment, and get them there. Banyan, it's my family. They've got 14 properties. On my own toll-free call number, 888-6-DARREN, DARREN. Same thing. If people can't afford it, I will do whatever it takes. Joe Tuttle, the CEO, is a dear friend of mine. We will scholarship people if they don't have the insurance, if you don't have the means, whatever it takes, because, that little kid that we talked about that was unhealed is finally now healed.
Yeah.
Because that self-esteem was attained and achieved by doing esteemable acts. When you said, if you never hear it again, we're going to get to one person on this show, and I have a feeling we're going to get to a lot more than one. That's what keeps me going. It's not the business anymore. I love it. I was on the phone with Ric Flair this morning for 20 minutes, going over a commercial we just got, and Hulk yesterday, and texting with Charlie Sheen an hour before this about some business stuff. And, that's getting great. That's my career. That's my job. That's not who I am. If I lost the business tomorrow, the hardest part would be, not taking care of everybody that I love. I've got 9 people that work for me, 3 assistants, 6 agents, my mom, my sister, but I would be okay because I figured life out. I found myself. I found my soul on this journey. I've found my purpose in life. And some of the most successful people in the world, like Magic Johnson said after he saw the Jay Shetty interview, he goes, "You're going to get through to some major ballers
Yeah.
that, that very high net worth people," because he goes, some things he said even made me think about certain, ways. And, Hulk Hogan told me, I saw him the day after Thanksgiving, and he didn't have time to watch it when he came out. And he watched that interview, was in tears. He goes, "Brother," he goes, "it's so true. Most of us go through life. And sometimes that, that whatever it might have been, that trauma, that experience, that time, it's unhealed because you've ripped it all out and replaced it with all the good."
Yeah.
And, I work on it every day, though. I'm far from perfect, man. And my girlfriend, Nicolette, will tell you 99% of the time, life is great with us. But I have a bad day, a bad night's sleep. I'm overwhelmed with business and stuff. Words can come out of my mouth wrong. That's why I try to practice what I preach, say what I mean what I say, don't say and mean. It's sometimes better to be all right than right and don't engage in argument. I think that goes for everybody listening, not just if you're suffering from mental health or, substance abuse. It's just little, tidbits and nuggets that I've learned to be the best spiritual version of Darren Prince.
And for our listeners, again, that foundation is aiminghighfoundation.org. You can go there and learn how you can support the great cause. One thing about AA and your program of recovery, and I think that you really lived and embodied that, putting the same effort into sobriety. Where that really shone through was, all your meetings that you hit on the road in your book. It wasn't a day off. You had to hit a meeting that was just part of the day. It's part of the schedule. It's part of the routine. Just because you're in Chicago or LA or New York, it doesn't matter. You're finding a meeting. You're gonna do that.
Man, I am a first ballot Hall of Famer. Mariano Rivera, I'd be the only one that would get in unanimously. And I don't say it to impress people. I say it to impress upon. There's not one of the biggest advocates, my spiritual brothers and sisters from, Chris Herron, Ryan Hansen, Tim Ryan, Jennifer Jimenez, Brandon Novak, Anna David, everybody back in New Jersey. Man, I've got stories. London and Wheeler, Fiji on the beach before New Year's, Honolulu, Maui, Monaco. When I went to Magic and Cookie's 60th birthday celebration 2 years ago, I hit one in San Tropez. I mean, it's the greatest freaking feeling in the world.
Yeah.
The greatest feeling in the world when you could walk into a room or on a beach and not know a single person, but you know everybody.
Yeah.
And you're not home, and you could be in Europe in the middle of nowhere, but you're home. It's unexplainable.
It is really amazing. I want to ask you about a tougher subject. You mentioned this in your book, and so many people who are struggling with severe mental health and substance disorders also consider this at some point. You really were seriously considering ending your life at one point. Didn't go through with it, luckily. But what advice would you give to our listeners out there who may be in a similar situation you were at that time and are having those types of thoughts?
Just to reach out, ask for help. You guys can find me on Instagram at agent_DP. I'll send out free copies of Aiming High to anybody. We send out thousands of them over the years. I don't even care. I didn't write Aiming High to make money. When it started to make money, that's when I started my foundation. But, I just know there's a lot of people in dark places. But, anybody going through tough times in life, whether it's substance use, mental health, health issues, marital relationship problems, family issues, if you're in hell, keep going. You'll come out of the other side. I've seen it with people with way, way worse situations than I've ever had in my lifetime. And you could do it. It's just sometimes God, whatever you believe in, whatever higher power, really needs us to go through the dark so we can find the light. And, if you're struggling, like I said, do not give up and ask for help, because that's where the strength comes. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself.
The book is Aiming High, Darren Prince. The book is fantastic. I loved it. I read it in one sitting, as I said before. I highly recommend you pick up a copy of it. aiminghighfoundation.org is the website. You can go to find ways to support and give help and advocacy to this journey. I am always available, Darren, if you ever think there's anything I can do to help in your advocacy work. I love doing this kind of work. I'd be happy to be a part of it in any way possible. Also, we are planning an alumni event this year in 2022, and we are excited to have you as a speaker. I think it's going to be incredibly powerful. We want our alumni to know that they can stay sober and healthy throughout their lives, and we're always here. Darren, it's been great talking with you today and getting to know you. I look forward to working with you again in the future. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Dr. Ender. I appreciate everything, and looking forward to see you at the event in a few months.
Absolutely. Also, be sure to check out Darren's website at officialdarrenprince.com and his foundation at aiminghighfoundation.org. I'm Dr. Bender of the BeWell Network. Our show was created to help people. For more information, visit bewellnetwork.com. Until next time, be well.